Good morning. So it's good to be back, no? After what? 2 Sundays? Nga nawa me? Yeah. Anyway, so we're going back to our series in Romans. So we went through Romans 1, Romans 2, or part of Romans 2. And then, ni break ta, pero actually kind of connected gihapon with Ephesians, diba? Katong the suffering of Christians. And so we go back now to Romans. And so we're gonna finish the second half of Romans 2 and the entire chapter 3. So I know it's kind of big. So we're gonna go through dako nga chunks of texts, and then we're gonna go through little by little pud nga mga texts. Alright? So we're gonna start in Romans chapter 2, verse 17. And then we're gonna finish the whole chapter 3. But Romans 2, verse 17 ta. So let me recap lang muna. Last week, we talked about how God judges. Remember? And we talked about the basis of God's judgment. And so, no, not last week, last week. So Freddy talked about it and how God judges based on His character, His truth, our works, and our knowledge. So in other words, watay is kapo. Because His truth, our works pagyud. So, in a sense, we have no way of justifying ourselves or making excuses for ourselves. And remember that the church in Rome was part Jews, part non-Jews or Gentiles. And so the Jews, when they heard all these things, all about the judgment and all that, what do you think the Jews thought of? For example, if let's say there's a Pinoy leader, and there's a conference with all Filipinos and other nationalities, and he says, all of you guys will be under judgment. What will the Pinoys think? The Pinoy will probably think, maybe all of them but not us because kabayan. So maybe we're accepted. Right? That's probably how we think. And that's how the Jews felt. So when Paul was talking about the judgment to all the world, a lot of the Jews were thinking, we're probably exempt. You know, son of Abraham, we have our lineage. Probably we will not be part of the all there. Okay, so in Romans chapter 2, verse 17, Paul wants to make sure that the Jews understand nga apil sila, that they're included. Romans 2, verse 17 says, if you call yourself a Jew and rely on the law and boast in God and know His will and approve what is excellent, because you're instructed in the law, and if you are so sure that you yourself are a guide to the blind, a light to those who are in darkness, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of children, having in the law the embodiment of knowledge and truth, you then, who teach others, do you teach yourself? While you preach against stealing, do you steal? You who say that one must not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who boast in the law dishonor God by breaking the law. So what's he saying? You Jews, you rely on the law and then you boast. Okay, so what he's saying is, they think, now, well, we rely on the law. We're good. We're fine. Some will say, some Jews also said, we know God's will. It's not enough. Knowing God's will is not enough. What about doing God's will? How about what you approve or disapprove? Some Jews felt, now, God is happy with me because I approve of godliness. I approve of generosity. I disapprove of sin, so God should really like me already. That's not it. Some of the Jews thought, we have our tradition. I am very, very religious. I follow all my traditions, so I'm safe. They're not. Worst is number 5. They relied on their lineage or heritage. In other words, have you ever felt sometimes in Bisaya, you say it this way, kadugay na namo ng amigo, di jud ko apilon sa iyang kasuko. Or some people will think this way, because we've been friends for so long, or we know each other for a long time, if I do something wrong, it's probably gonna be okay with it. Because of our history, our sentimental past. But that's not really what God says gives us justification. It's not what gives us forgiveness. And the Jews thought, because God, or the Son of God, the Messiah, came from the Jewish line, they thought, then we are the light to the dark world. We are instructors of the blind. So they looked at themselves so highly. The problem is, they are part of the all. So look at verse 24. As it is written, the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. So Paul is actually telling them, or trying to remind them, do you remember what happened in the past? We are Jews. Well, Paul is also a Jew. He says, we are Jews, we're all Jews, and you guys think that it's fine because we're Jews. But what happened? Whenever we disobeyed God, God used the Gentiles to discipline us. And so how would the Gentiles feel about the Jews? Haha, God's disciplining you through me. So it's such a gigantic shame for the honor, for the name and the reputation of God, that God had to use the Gentiles to discipline His own people. Can you imagine the slap in the face? For God's face. But then God still did that, and Paul is reminding them that the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of the Jews themselves. For circumcision indeed is of value if you obey the law. But if you break the law, your circumcision becomes uncircumcision. So if a man who is uncircumcised keeps the precepts of the law, will not his uncircumcision be regarded as circumcision? In other words, what was circumcision? Circumcision was the way that a person would enter into covenant with God. It's kind of like an agreement. It's kind of like when you get married and you say, I do, at the altar. When you say, I do, you enter into a covenant of marriage between you and the Lord, and a contract of marriage between you and your spouse. What's the point of saying, I do, if the next day you go back to your old life as a single? There's no point. Diba? So what he's saying is, isn't it better if there's a person who wasn't able to say I do maybe, but very faithful, very loyal, very devoted? Isn't that so much better than someone who says I do and yet runs along with other women or other men? That's what Paul is trying to say. He says in verse 27, he who is physically uncircumcised but keeps the law will condemn you who have the written code and circumcision but break the law. For no one is a Jew who is merely one outwardly, nor is circumcision outward and physical, but a Jew is one inwardly, and circumcision is a matter of the heart by the Spirit, not by the letter. His praise is not from man, but from God. In other words, it's not so much really the outward appearance, but the heart. So it's kind of like the wedding example or the wedding ring. You know, if there are people who wear their wedding rings but pretend like they're not married, and there are those who maybe are forgetful and forget their wedding rings all the time, especially when they shower maybe. They leave it somewhere. But the heart is there. There's faithfulness, there's love, there's devotion. You know, they just forgot to wear the ring. Diba? So which do you think is better? Paul is saying it's the heart that matters so much more than the outward appearance. Now we go to Romans 3. So we're going to go through the whole chapter of Romans 3. Okay, so look at verse 1. Right after Paul says that being a Jew, all the outward things you did as a Jew doesn't matter. How do you think the Jews felt? They probably felt, oh, is God playing around? Gibinuangan lang mis Ginoo. Why did God, make us a people if it doesn't matter anyway? May paay na lang. But what Paul is saying, or God saying through Paul is, what advantage has the Jew? Or what is the value of circumcision? Verse 2, much in every way. To begin with, the Jews were entrusted with the oracles of God. The Jews were given the word of God that no one else had. There is still a form of grace there, a form of generosity that God showed to the Jews that He did not show to everyone else at that time. It's kind of like inside information. Have you ever seen foreigners who like Manny Pacquiao? As a boxer, okay? Not as a politician. As a boxer. Have you guys met foreigners who are so pro-Manny?
Yeah.
I have some friends who are very pro-Manny and they're foreigners. When Manny Pacquiao wins, The foreigners are like, yay, Manny! You know, Sylvester Stallone, we support Manny Pacquiao. But I think it's very different for a Pinoy. For the foreigner, they clap. But for a Pinoy, it adds so much more value, diba? They start thinking of their nationality, their pride as a Filipino, we're represented, and all that. There's a different kind of value, sentiment, joy, excitement to see him win. Or it's kind of like the Messianic Jews versus the Gentile believers. If you've ever met a Messianic Jew, I've only met one in my entire life. And this guy, the way he talks about the Messiah, about Christ, is very different. You know, I had so much joy listening to him over lunch during my Bible school times. Because the way he talks about the Messiah, he talks about it as if it's the fulfillment of everything they've been through. For me, I'm an outsider listening to him. One last example was, you guys know we came from Turkey, and we went to Ephesus. The thing is, it's not a religious tour. So our tour guide was actually a Muslim guy. And so when he went there, he talked about it as if it was just ruins. We went to the Hagia Sophia, and he talked about the Christian faith as a myth. It's very, very different. So can you imagine Rainy, me, and there's another couple there from Cebu Gospel Church, Christians also. So that the four of us were the only 4 Christians in the whole group. We went to Ephesus and we're like, this is where Paul preached. And everyone was like, yeah, take a selfie of the rocks. That's a nice background. Okay, that's a temple to Athena, Zeus library. They went there not understanding the significance. When we were there, we were like, yes, yes. So, there's a big difference. And that's how Paul wanted the Jews to feel. Paul was saying, guys, don't think that because you're a Jew and it doesn't matter outwardly, it doesn't matter at all. There's still value there. You just have to appreciate it from the inside, from the heart, from the spirit of the law and not the letter of the law. Now look at verse 3. What if some were unfaithful? Does their faithlessness nullify the faithfulness of God? By no means. Let God be true, though everyone were a liar, as it is written, that you may be justified in your words and prevail when you are judged. Now, we're going into apologetics, okay? So Paul is giving them a rational, logical argument. Some people were arguing, if we're all judged, and God's the only one who's right, and we're all wrong, isn't that unfair? Shouldn't majority win? And that's why he's saying, let God be proved right, and we're all wrong. So majority doesn't win. If God is just, listen to this argument, and we're going to play around with it. If God, who is just, judges the unjust, how could the Jews who were hypocrites judge God as unjust for judging the unjust? Sounds like a tongue twister? Okay, let's explain it, right? God is just. The Jews were hypocrites. They were unjust. And the Jews were judging the Gentiles. Remember? So if the hypocrites have the right to judge the Gentiles, and they themselves were guilty, how is God now unjust for judging hypocrites? You see the logic there? So hypocrisy, Paul is saying, what you're saying when you say, God should not judge us na lang. Why? God is the just one. You're the hypocrites. We're all sinners. Look at verse 5. But if our unrighteousness serves to show the righteousness of God, what shall we say? That God is unrighteous to inflict wrath on us? By no means. For then how could God judge the world? But if through my lie God's truth abounds to His glory, why am I still being condemned as a sinner? In other words, it's so easy to say, I want justice, if you're the victim. But if you're the guilty one, you're the criminal, do you really want justice? No. What you'll want is mercy. What you'll want is, sorry, and then you want the judge to say, sige na lang, sorry naman siya, sige, let him go. That's not what we don't really want justice unless we're the victim. Now, what do we desire? What we desire actually proves what we are. If you desire justice, it means you're the victim. if you don't want justice, it proves you're the criminal. Do you agree? Does it make sense? It does, di ba? So, what you desire, if you say, I want justice, it means you're innocent. Once you say, I don't want justice, you're admitting you're the criminal. You're the one who wants mercy then. Because you don't want justice. Now, have you ever seen those traffic lights nga, it's not a light, it's like those signs and then it's black, yellow, black, yellow, black, yellow, those lines? Okay. Why is it black and yellow stripes? Why not one big yellow sign na lang? Why is it black, yellow, black, yellow, black, yellow? Why is it alternate? Why do you think they did it that way? Looks nicer, maybe. Think about it. If it's one big yellow sign, you'll think it's a signboard. Agreed? But at night, because it's black and yellow, the colors contrast. And because the colors are contrasting, you see the yellow stripes more clearly. Agreed? That's what Paul's trying to say. He's saying, if our unrighteousness serves to show the righteousness of God, what shall we say? That God is unrighteous? He says, no. If through my lie, God's truth abounds to His glory, why am I being condemned? In other words, what he's saying is, our unrighteousness, our sin, serves a purpose. Our blackness is there to highlight God's brightness. Is it clear? It's kind of like glow-in-the-dark stuff. You turn on the light, if there's a glow-in-the-dark item and the lights are on, you won't appreciate that it's glow-in-the-dark. Once you turn off the lights and darkness comes in, the glow becomes clear. We are that darkness. We are the hugaw, the sin. And God is the one that's supposed to be bright. His glory is supposed to be emphasized. So what's the purpose of our sin? To emphasize His glory. That's basically it. And so the verse 8, another logical argument, the sinners will say, if that's the point of our sin, why not do more evil so that more of God's goodness is shown? Let's commit more sins para mapakita nga good kaayo si God. You try to, do you see where they're trying to go? You see what they're trying to do? They're trying to abuse grace now. They're saying, magpakasa na lang tagsamot para mas mag-glorify ang Ginoo. Diba? Let's do more evil stuff. But Paul says, this is even more proof of their guilt. The fact that you're trying to look for an excuse to sin more proves that you're really sinners. Diba? So, walay lusot. Look at verse 9. What then? Are we Jews any better off? No, not at all. For we have already charged that all, both Jews and Greeks, or Gentiles, are under sin. As it is written, and now Paul is going to do something spectacular. This, if you look in your Bible, this is actually one under quotations, diba? And then it's indented in the Bible. You know why? That's not because it's quoted from one psalm, huh? Remember, Paul was under Gamaliel, the Rabbi Gamaliel. He's a Hebrew of Hebrews, the ultimate Pharisee. He knows the scriptures. And he actually pulls out from the Psalms and from Isaiah, kuha niya tanan niya, connect. And this is what he's saying. He says, none is righteous, no, not one. No one understands God. Or no one understands, no one seeks God. All have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. No one does good. Not even one. So how many? 0. Probably even negative. And then he says, their throat is an open grave. They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of asps is under their lips. Their mouth is full of curses and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. In their paths are ruin and misery. And the way of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. So no one is righteous, not one. No one understands. In other words, mind. No one seeks God. That's their inclination. Everyone has become worthless, meaning not worth anything good. All have turned aside. To turn aside means to rebel, or like a soldier, and then they're about to go to war, and then the soldier, instead of marching forward, U-turn. That's what it means to turn aside, okay, to be a traitor. Their throat is an open grave. Their tongues are used to deceive, and the venom of asps is under their lips. Their mouth is full of curses and bitterness. This means betrayal or lies, deception. No? Cunning, their feet are swift to shed blood. Indeed, so in words, in thoughts, in inclinations, in their minds, now in their deeds, napagyud, in their paths are ruin and misery, meaning in renown. So you're even in their reputation palang, still sinful. And the way of peace they have not known, in the lifestyle. So, is there really anything good? Mind, heart, thoughts, words, deeds, inclination, reputation, and lifestyle. No escape. Why? There is no fear of God before their eyes. Remember Romans 1 verse 21, Paul says, they did not worship God as God. They did not treat God as God, that God is supposed to be feared, to be revered, to be honored, to be respected, to be loved, to be admired. Here, there is no fear of God before their eyes. Just as Proverbs says, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. So verse 19, now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be stopped, and the whole world may be held accountable to God. So, what's the purpose of the law? What's the purpose of having laws? The purpose of the law is to protect what you value. Think about it. For example, cyber law. Diba, before there were no internets, there's no internet yet, so there's no such thing as cyber law. And then the internet was formulated or was invented, and so they needed to create a law to protect the rights of people online. Hence, cyber law. So why was cyber law created? To protect something that we value. If there was no law, we just think that it's wrong, but there's no objective way of saying it's really wrong. Do you agree? Think about this. I've never watched it, but I really kind of plan to. If you guys watch